We haven't possibly got time to go into all 20, but there are some really interesting points here. And it just focuses minds, doesn't it, really, Peter, this, as we approach the 1 year anniversary on the 24th on Friday, about how much the world has changed in the last 12 months.
Yeah, it has indeed. Obviously, yes, we can't go through all 20. The key thing is what's happened to Ukraine itself, obviously. And then after that, what has happened to Russia, how Russia has changed, Russia's relationship with the West. But, it's affected all of us. It's affected our daily lives. It's affected us when we go to the supermarket and we think, gosh, that's become expensive. It's affected us when we've received our energy bills, when we've seen our mortgage statements, and other sort of secondary, tertiary kind of effects. I suppose it's kind of made us greener. This kind of determination to reduce dependence on Russian energy has really given a push to the development of green energy on a national level. It's made a lot of people, I think, want to install solar panels where they wouldn't have done so. All manner of effects, really.
Yeah, certainly. If we talk about the effect on Russia, it has weakened Putin. There are several arguments out there that it's essentially impossible to get rid of Vladimir Putin as the Russian president, and he's been determined to remain in power. But many argue that he should have stepped out while the going was a little bit better, and that if Russia lose this war, that it puts him in the ultimate position of finishing his very long reign as president of Russia on a real sour point. That is it, if indeed the Russian people can depose of him.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. If one looks at Vladimir Putin, he's been there since 2000. What are the ways that he could go? Well, he could be deposed in a palace coup. These things, it's very difficult to predict if these things could happen or not, but it would be very, very difficult because he's essentially surrounded himself with loyalists. He's been there long enough to do that. Alternatively, he could be deposed by a popular uprising, but the signs of that are not very good either. We saw some protests very early in the war. They've largely faded. People who were particularly opposed to the war have fled the country, a large number of them. Almost 1 million people have gone from Russia. And I suppose the third thing is, yes, he faces elections in 2024, so already next year. But Russian elections are fairly flexible kind of things, and I don't think that would really defer him either. And the fourth possibility, of course, is ill health. There are all these rumors around, completely unsubstantiated, that he is ill, that he might perhaps even have cancer of some sort. But you look at him; he's still going through the motions. It doesn't look like he's about to head off for sick leave.
Yeah, it has strengthened NATO, the war in Ukraine in the last year, but it's also created a new Russian diaspora as well. And I comment on this because I've just come back from Dubai, Peter, where there are now loads and loads of Russians. They were flights were still able to come into Dubai from Russia. And there is a huge community now in Dubai of Russians who are causing rents to increase because demand is up on rental properties. They were staying in a lot of the big hotels and really enhancing Dubai's economy. Whatever you think of that, there are large amounts of Russians now living elsewhere.
Yeah, that's that's almost the flip side of what's been happening in Europe. That traditionally Russians would go skiing in the Alps. There's the French resort of Courchevel, which is a real favorite with Russians. It's very, very difficult for them to go there now because it's very difficult for them to get visas to come to France. So, Russian numbers are really down there. If you look at the Côte d'Azur, Monaco, all these sort of places along the coast where they'd want to dock their yachts, they're not particularly welcome there. So yeah, this big diversion in tourist flows. And then, of course, we've got the Russians who are not going on holiday at all, but the ones I mentioned earlier, who just kind of fled the country, either because they're opposed to Putin's policies or, in more cases, because they're young men of military age and they don't want to be called up. They've tended to go to sort of surrounding countries such as Georgia, Kazakhstan, Turkey. I suspect a good number of those, at least those with some money, have popped up in Dubai as well, and they're not holidaying at all, but they've just kind of taken up residence there.